This morning we continue discussing the character of a God who saves. And if you would, go ahead and turn in your Bible back to Luke 15 as we read this morning. The entire chapter discusses lost and found. The three stories that are contained are about something that is lost, that is later reclaimed, and the stories are beautiful. They are three renditions of the same thought. This isn't where it's supposed to be, and getting that back. And we'll look, as this month is the character study of God, a character of a God who saves, specifically at one character in a story that's clarified three times. Not necessarily or specifically the coin, the sheep, or the son that is lost, but the father that receives that son back, the widow who sweeps the house, and the shepherd who is looking after those sheep. As we read the story, we noticed that different things are used for who we are. There's the son, as I mentioned, is lost, the coins, and the sheep. And what is noticeable in all of those portions of those stories is that there are others. There's another son, there's more sheep, there's other coins. And specifically looking at the sheep, there's 100 sheep. This is 1% that is lost. This is one that's an individual that is lost, and there are others. Again, with the coins, it's up to 10%, but still, the prosperity is there. Otherwise, the one that is lost would be seemingly an insignificant amount. It would be seemingly something that could be done without. Even the son who decides to go off and find his own path or sow his own oats or to go live his own way, you can kind of understand that there's one of those, well, maybe I'll just cut my losses in what it is costing me. That's pretty strong sentiment for that. But it can be done without. If you lost the one sheep, at least you still had the 99. If you lost the one coin, at least you still had the 9 others. Some kind of reasoning can be made there. That reasoning is just ours. It's a human reasoning. It's kind of a giving up type of a philosophy. The philosophy that our God takes is that He wants all. He doesn't want any to be lost. He doesn't want one coin to go missing. It's not good enough to have the majority. There is no one who is insignificant. There is no one who is less than. There is no one who is not loved, that is not desired, that is not as cherished by God. Everyone is worth going out on the mountain, sweeping the house for. Everyone is worth something to God. Each individual has value. In Mark, we read about throwing off your Christianity or placing God on the back burner, or however you want to word it. And the price or the value that is set is the entire world. So what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and forfeit their soul? Trading one for the other, as if they were an equal trade. Everyone is valuable. Both or all of the things in Luke, specifically we're going to look at the first two, the coin and the sheep, have value. Sheep were used as a measure of prosperity. If you wanted to describe how rich someone was, one of the things that's going to come up is the amount of flocks that they have. The flocks that they have would directly relate back to the riches they have, because that would be currency that can be used. Coins obviously kind of go without saying that they are a thing of value. They are a medium of trade. One is given for either goods or services on the other end. Both of these are marks of prosperity. In Old Testament times and New Testament times, children were a retirement plan. If you wanted to eventually grow old and not have to till the ground or work the field or show up on butchering day to butcher, you had to have kids to do it for you. All of the things that are used are marks of prosperity, measurements of prosperity, and all of them, meaning all of us, are valuable. The one who is lost, and in Luke 15:4 and in verse 8 also, both of these stories of the sheep and the coin, they're described as being lost. Something that's outside, something that's separate from the owner. The point is that they're not with the owner. That is lost. That is the condition that is considered lost. It's no more harsh than that. However, it's no more soft than that either. Being without is being without, because neither are useful in this situation. Neither the coin. What good is a coin that is hidden underneath a whatever, or that is rolled into a crack in the floor? It can't be spent for anything. It has no value because it cannot be used for its value. What good is a sheep that is not in the flock, because it can't be sheared, because it's not there to be sheared. It can't be milked. It can't be used for food. It's purposeless. We have a purpose. To serve God. And that's our purpose. And if we're not serving God, then we have to seriously consider what our condition is, what our value is, what makes us valuable. One of those things that gives us a representation of value is that we are able to give and give back. The attitude shown for the thing that is lost is not anger. I'm sure that at least a couple of us in here have lost something and become very angry about it. You misplace that thing that you just know where it is and it's not there anymore. It's just the reaction can be anger, it can be despair, it can be worry, it can be immediate dismissal. Oh well, I've got my 99 sheep, or I've got my 9 coins, or I guess I'm going to have to move on without it. And the attribute that is shown, or the characteristic that is shown, is patience. All right, I guess I'm going to have to sweep the house. Who's going to volunteer to do that? That's something that typically calls for patience just on a day-to-day basis, and that this is a task that you're going to carry out or to perform. Take it to the third story, the one that is a little bit different than the first two. Oh, that prodigal son, and the amount of patience that had to have been shown. What kind of patience does that father show? Because whenever this inheritance is taken, and then the child moves to a far-off land, or goes to wherever he goes, he's not where his father wants him. Can you imagine a father like Job, who sat down, and we have listed that Job would kneel down and pray for his children in case they might have sinned, just in case they said something errantly, or just in case they did something that's contrary, just in case Job sits down and prays. Can you imagine that this figure patiently waiting on the return or the fruition of that child that is no longer with? Patience that is shown is incredible, that this attribute is chosen over any other. It shows the power of God, or the character of God, and that He did not choose any characteristics that are human-like to be here. He didn't cut his losses, and He remains faithful. One of the comforting verses, it's comforting to me, in 2 Timothy chapter 2, we find, the saying is trustworthy, for if we have died with Him, we also live with Him, speaking of baptism. If we endure, He will also reign with Him, speaking of our service. If we deny Him, He will deny us, hearkening back to Matthew's statement of, whoever denies me, I will deny before the Father. If we are faithless, He remains faithful. So you have the first contrarian statement here from one to the other. regardless of what our status is and our ability to serve and our ability to get our mind in the right area, and our ability to worship or sing or to do whatever God requires in His service, whatever our day-to-day actions and abilities are, He still remains faithful. He still is patient. He's still looking for the lost, and He still treasures what He has. Regardless of what our condition is, a lost sheep, a lost coin, someone who is completely rejected and left the reservation, God still stands waiting. The way that it's pictured in the third story, the prodigal son, is that the fattened calf is killed. It doesn't say that he fattened a calf to be killed. It doesn't say that he went and found a fattened calf to be killed. He had one waiting. Is that peculiar to anyone else? That here the father figure has a fattened calf that is already waiting for whatever celebration, maybe specifically this one. He's waiting. And picture it with, as some of the painters of old who were very renowned, as an open hand, just waiting for the return, for the one who is lost to not be lost anymore. If we are faithless and we let go of that hand, it's still there. He's still patiently waiting. But it's not enough. He puts out for the one that is lost. He is there. Just in the effort of being available, of listening to our prayers, is an act of mercy. Just in God existing and waiting to hear what we have to say, what we can return to Him, is an act of kindness. When I was a littler kid, I like to read Greek mythology. The middle school had a great big red book, like that big, much bigger than all the others on Greek mythology. One of the things that you notice about all of their gods is that it was their agenda that they were following. If they interacted with a human, that's fine, that's whatever. It's just kind of one of the things to carry the story along. But they were following their own agenda to something that actually mattered. When Elijah is having his contest on Mount Carmel, he's sitting back and he's making fun of the prophets of Baal, and he says, well, maybe your God's on a far-off trip. Why isn't your God paying attention? And over, he's like, maybe you need to cry louder. How about this? How about you cut yourself and bleed a little bit? Make your God listen. We don't think about that. In fact, that sounds rather silly and actually points to the kind of guy that Elijah was, that he pokes the bear. Do you take for granted that your God listens all the time? That He is waiting to hear from you? That He is faithful and He is waiting and He is available. He puts out for no other reason except that He loves us. And that is awesome and easily taken for granted, so let's not do that. One of the things that is used is a coin. One of the things that gives a coin value, or a standardized measurement of value, is the imprinting that is on said coin. Different coins mean different things in different kingdoms. If a coin is stamped with the insignia, the royal insignia, whatever that meant, it meant that it was certified. First of all, it meant that it belonged to that kingdom. It meant that it was a certain value, but one of the things that was being guaranteed or backed up by the government is that the castor, or the words fail me, I apologize. The persons who created the coin are saying that it is this percentage of metal, it contains so much silver, or it contains so much gold, or whatever metal it's being made out of. But they are certifying behind it the value of the kingdom says that this is worth this. In your own dollar bills, if you happen to have any of them that are not plastic in your pocket, you can pull them out and it will say on there, and not to this specific wording, but the U.S. government says that this piece of paper is worth this much money. Some of us would argue there's not much behind the third word on that, since we were off the gold standard. However, the government says that this is worth this. Well, what is the coin? If we're the coin in this picture, then the government says that we're worth what? The government who stamped the coin says that we're worth sweeping the entire house out to find an individual coin. Would you do that for a penny? Well, certainly not, because it's worthless, right? Many of us just walk by a penny in a parking lot and not even think about it, especially if it's on tails. That's just crazy. A nickel? Do you bend over and pick up the nickel? Do you even bend over and pick up the quarter? Does it have to be a $5 bill before you care enough to stoop down and pick it up? There's a value though, right? There's a certain amount. I mean, none of us are passing up 100. You see, if there's a C note on the ground, all of us are going to get down, regardless of whether we could actually get back up or not. We're all getting down for that $100 bill. The government says that we are valuable enough. Our God considers each of us individually valuable enough that the entire house is swept out. That regardless of what is left in the open country, the one sheep is worth going across the barren wasteland for. The one. And that is any one of us. And that is a beautiful thought. Your God values you. If you found that $100 bill, what do you do? Maybe it goes on Facebook. That would be an amount of rejoicing. In verses 8 and 10, the neighbors are contacted. Verses 4 and 6, or pardon me, 7 and 9 go right along with these two thoughts about, I found it and I rejoice. We sang a song this morning, or a couple of songs actually this morning, to that effect of find it and rejoice. The festival that is given at the end of the 15th chapter when the prodigal son returns home is one that is so noisy, is so loud, is so out there. The music is turned up to 11 so that whenever the son comes in from afar off, he says, wow, what's going on up there? That must be some party. That must be some celebration. The joy in heaven over one that is found, one that is saved, or one that is brought home is incredible. It's incredible because it's not just about being found. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Remember the scripture we just read about if we are faithless, he remains faithful. And being able to take one home is powerful. The rejoicing in heaven of one that makes it to the gate and says, yeah, I accomplished this. It's not lost in God's eyes that we're here and we run a race and we're accomplishing everything that we can accomplish. We make attachments and we show love to one another as he loves us. And we follow his example and we grow very attached and we grow very fond of not only the way things are, but of each other, right? It's a humanistic, it's a godly characteristic. It's not just a humanistic, but it's also a godly characteristic that one cares for another. There are animals, not made in the image of God, but created by God, that mourn the loss of other animals. There are plants that do not prosper if they are not with other plants. I don't know what any of them are. I do know that there are some, but I couldn't name them, that prosper whenever they are with others. And whenever we are separated from one another, even though it's just temporary. It's a hard thing. It's a difficult thing. and the comfort is that we can look to God because He bridges that gap between what we have here and what there is beyond. Psalm 34 portion at the end of this psalm is that when the righteous cry out for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of their troubles. It doesn't say exactly what He will do. It doesn't say exactly how this will happen. It specifically says, though, that God will take care of them, delivers them out of all of their troubles. The Lord is near the brokenhearted and saves the crushed spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He keeps all his bones, not one of them is broken. Affliction will slay the wicked. Those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Remember that God is the owner of the coin. He's the owner of the sheep. His disposition for those is as He chooses. That is one of the things that makes us valuable, is that we can do something for Him. And it would be easy at times to become faithless and to let go of that hand because of brokenheartedness or having a crushed spirit. But here is the reminder to look to Him for our confidence, to find refuge in Him, that He will give. God has a desire for us. The character of God is the study of the month. The character of God. The character of the individual for each of these stories is someone who desires us. It's not that the shepherd owns sheep because owning sheep is a thing to do. He loves and cares for the sheep. It's important to him. It's not that owning coins is a thing to do, so the widow owns coins. It is something she desires, as is shown by the evidence of what she puts out to find one that is lost. And how many of us that are parents can easily relate to the value of a child? That's one of those things that goes without saying. It's not just that it's a small human and maybe it can't fend for itself, but it's a desire to love, to teach, to nurture, to grow, to bring up, to see all of the joy along the way. That desire is as God has for us, knowing us from the time we're formed in the womb throughout the entirety of our lives. And it is His hope that at the end of that life, He can take us home and continue one final eternal day with us then. So the answer at the end is, who is the sheep that is found? Or who is the coin that is located? What kind of person is that son that returns home? The words rock bottom are not in the English language in Luke chapter 15. But the insinuation or the allegory or the illustration, the thought of hitting rock bottom and turning to God is in verse 17 of Luke chapter 15. But when he came to himself, he said, I'll go home. This is opened up in Isaiah chapter 66, at the very end of the second verse. But this is the one to whom I will look, who God will look. And it is the answer to, this is the coin that I can find. This is the sheep that I can locate. This is the one who comes to himself and says, I'll go home. He who is humble and contrite in spirit and trembles at my word. There's no hoops to jump through. There's no symbol to bang on. There's no act of righteousness that can be performed. When a heart comes to a place that is humble and contrite and says, oh Lord, you are my God. It is spelled out in Romans as calling on the name of the Lord. We see that through the act of baptism. We become saved. We enter into his death and are available to be resurrected like him in the final day. Check that against 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And then it's all lived by faith. Turn to Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, about the grace of God being given to those who have faith. How great is it that when someone can bring their heart, when some Christian, erring Christian can bring their heart to say, my Father is where I should go. Humble and contrite in spirit, remembering who their God is, that he will find them and he will be able, he'll have them, be able to anything. He can, if they're his. This is the one to whom I will look. He who is humble and contrite in spirit and trembles at my word. God is awesome. The character of God, as we're going through and looking at these things, these attributes, how perfectly pure and holy he is, that we looked at last week, and the difference between him and everything else. Then this week we look at his desire for us to be there with him as well. He's so much different, yet his chief thing is us. It's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. If you question your relationship with God, if you think that there might be anything that separates you from him, then that needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. Bring your thought process, bring your spirit to one that is humble and contrite.